Have you ever been pulled into a game by a family member? One whose rules you don't know at all, just because they believe you are the only one who can salvage the situation? Leah, 22 years old, a hotel management student. She had never set foot in a luxury environment. Yet now, she was about to walk into the Royal Crest luxury hotel, where million-dollar contracts and dirty secrets were wrapped in elegant smiles. She was not going there to intern. She was going to expose a group of managers embezzling from the charity fund her uncle, Marcus Bell, had poured his heart into building. Pursuing. Friday afternoon. Leah's student apartment was quiet, with only the steady hum of her laptop fan. She had just closed it, her hand still resting on the lid, when the phone vibrated. The screen lit up Marcus Bell calling, accompanied by a photo of the city skyline as seen from his penthouse. Her heart sank. Marcus did not call to make small talk. 15 minutes later, Leah stood before the revolving glass door of the tallest tower in the city. A steel-clad elevator with gold-plated floor numbers took her to the top. When the doors opened, sunset light spilled into the carpeted hallway. The polished walnut floor reflected each streak of light. The city outside still moved, but through the thick glass, every sound seemed to vanish, leaving a heavy silence. Marcus sat behind a dark desk, the warm yellow light casting a slanting glow on his shoulder. He slowly turned his chair, fingers interlaced, looking at Leah as if weighing a chess move. Then he pushed a thin file toward her. Royal Crest is being stolen from Leah. Not thousands, but millions of dollars from the scholarship fund. He paused, his gaze locked. If I investigate personally, they will cover it up within an hour. But if it's you, you'll just be a rookie. No one will suspect a thing. Leah looked down, touching the freshly printed staff badge. The name Leah Carter sat neatly under the Royal Crest logo. Cold. Hardened. Her fingers tightened, nails pressing into the glossy plastic as if to carve the feeling in. I've never worked in a place like that, she said softly. Marcus leaned forward, voice low and firm. You won't be alone. But once you step in, you cannot reveal that you are Marcus Bell's niece, not even to the board. In Leah's mind, an image flashed and the back of her neck turned cold. If they found out the truth, what would happen? On her way out of the penthouse, she stopped before a glass window. Below, the sea of lights blinked like countless eyes. Part of her wanted to run. The other part wanted to know who was bold enough to steal in a place that seemed the safest of all. The next morning, the gold-plated revolving door of Royal Crest swallowed her steps into the marble-floored lobby. A massive crystal chandelier shone like ice, reflecting off mirrors that reached the ceiling. Staff in black and gray uniforms moved in sync. A few cast her measuring glances. Not welcoming ones. Before she could reach the reception desk, a voice as cold as ice sounded right behind her. You're not supposed to be here. That sound was still echoing in her ears when Leah turned around. A staff member in a gray suit merely walked past, as if those words had never been spoken. She took a few more steps, and Royal Crest came into full view. Light from the largest crystal chandelier she had ever seen shattered into thousands of rays, dancing across the cream-colored marble floor. The sound of leather shoes meeting the ground formed a slow rhythm, interspersed with the faint clink of glassware at the lounge counter. The scent of luxury perfume mingled with the aroma of freshly brewed Arabica coffee, thick in the cool air from the air conditioning system. Every glance that lingered briefly on her made the heat in her chest rise by a beat. From the reception desk, a woman stepped forward. A navy blue fitted suit hugged her frame, shoulders perfectly squared, every strand of brown hair tied neatly as if measured with a ruler. Her smile opened just enough to be polite, but it never reached the cold gray of her eyes. Leah Carter. Her voice was smooth, without a single wasted syllable. I'm in, sir. Dalton, morning shift manager. She did not shake hands, only tilted her head slightly and gestured toward the elevator bank. Today, you'll be going up to the 18th floor. VIP section. The assignment rang in Leah's mind like a challenge, wrapped in an invitation. The 18th floor, where only Royal Crest's most expensive guests ever came. She nodded, keeping her voice steady. Yes, ma'am. But inside, every cell was on alert. As she stepped into the brass-paneled elevator, Leah glanced upward. A security camera was mounted diagonally in the corner, not the hidden or straight-on placement common in other hotels. That angle covered every movement, even when guests thought they were out of sight. A small detail, but enough for her to file away in her memory as a warning. The elevator doors closed slowly. Through the last narrowing gap, Leah caught sight of a man in a black suit standing in the lobby motionless, his eyes fixed on her. That gaze followed her into the darkness of the elevator car, lasting longer than any blink should. The feeling of that gaze still clung to Leah as she stepped into the elevator. When the doors opened on the 18th floor, the scent of polished wood mixed with lavender spilled out soft yet dense. The hallway was lined with deep gray carpet, the warm yellow of wall sconces creating a level of luxury that seemed to wrap every sound in velvet. A figure was already waiting near a housekeeping cart. Rosa, gray-streaked hair neatly tied back, sun-darkened hands and deep wrinkles around her eyes as if she had witnessed thousands of stories. She looked Leah up and down, her gaze strange, half cautious, half pitying. New here, the hoarse voice was not exactly a question. Leah gave a slight nod. Yes, como es, Leah Carter. Rosa pointed at the cart. Follow me. No further words. As soon as Leah stepped out of the first room, a shout rang out from the end of the hallway. A manager in a black suit was standing close to a young service staff member, pointing at a minibar inventory sheet. Why are you asking about this cost? Your job is to clean, not to count money. The air froze. The young staffer stammered something, but was cut off. Take off your staff badge. Right now, the sound of the badge hitting the carpet was like a door slamming shut. The other employees averted their eyes, their hands busy pretending to straighten bed linens or push carts. Leah stood still, feeling her heartbeat thudding in her throat. Rosa quietly pushed the cart away, murmuring just loud enough for Leah to hear, "Remember their faces, and remember to keep your mouth shut." Leah cast a quick glance down the hallway, committing to memory every face near the incident, especially the manager with eyes sharp as blades. As they turned into a new row of rooms, a chill pricked at the back of Leah's neck. Even with her back turned, she knew somewhere in this dim golden light, a pair of eyes was still following her every step. The soft light from the table lamp cast upward onto the ceiling, creating a pale yellow halo that spread across the spacious room. The scent of freshly polished oak furniture blended with a faint trace of cigar smoke, rich but not harsh. On the desk sat a cognac-colored leather suitcase. Beside it, a pair of gold-rimmed glasses and a mechanical wristwatch, its second hand gliding slowly, quietly flaunting its value. The VIP guest was standing near the window, back turned. The gray pinstripe suit fit perfectly, a slim platinum bracelet peeking from his wrist. He held a phone to his ear, his voice deep yet each word clear. Weekend in the wine cellar. No need for too many people. Only those who have contributed. Leah paused her hands, borrowing the motion of straightening the bedspread to listen more closely. Names on the list, he said, then fell silent for a few beats as if listening to the reply. Make sure they understand. She quietly committed to memory the two names mentioned, each syllable distinct, as if spoken deliberately so they would not be forgotten. When she bent down to pick up an empty glass from the side table, Leah noticed a beige envelope under a travel magazine. The corner of the envelope bore the hotel's logo, but also had blue pen markings, resembling initials. Nearby, the laptop screen was still open, an unfinished email displaying the subject line shipment confirmation. The sound of footsteps. The guest turned, ending the call without a goodbye. His gaze swept over Leah, pausing for a moment as if to guess what she might have heard. Leah lowered her eyes, wiping the table surface with slow, even movements. She offered a polite, professional smile, the kind of look a new employee would give while trying to do a good job. But as he moved toward the bathroom, she had already etched into her memory not only the names, but also the time and location of the transaction that weekend. That evening, the bar sent a special request, a rare bottle of Bordeaux from the wine cellar. Leah took the slip and followed the service hallway where few people passed. The way down lay behind a black-painted steel door, its hinges creaking as she pushed it open. A spiral staircase led downward, weak yellow light casting halos on each wooden step. Cool air slipped under her uniform, carrying the scent of damp wood and aged wine. The sound of her shoes hitting the floor echoed, each step like a louder beat in her chest. At the bottom of the stairs, the wine cellar door was ajar. Leah froze, hiding behind a wooden rack, between rows of shelves stacked with bottles, missions. Dalton stood beside another manager. They leaned over a stainless steel table, pen moving quickly across a stack of papers. The light reflected their shadows onto the shiny metal surface, enough for Leah to see short, decisive movements. She slid her phone from her pocket, holding it close to her body to avoid catching the light. Her finger found the record button, her breathing slowing with each faint vibration of the lens. A soft click sounded when she accidentally shifted the toe of her shoe on the floor. Leah's heart jolted. In the reflection, the other manager lifted his head, pen stopping mid-motion. Leah pressed her back to the wooden rack, the smell of dust and old wood filling her nose. She kept the camera steady, capturing the moment the two exchanged the final sheet of paper. Then, why, as if sensing something, Mrs. Dalton turned. Her gaze swept past the rack straight into the dark space where Leah was standing. At this point, only a few steps separated them, and Leah didn't know if she still had time to get away. If it were you, what would you do in that moment? Step out and confront her, or try to remain silent? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to know how Leah will manage, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to follow the next part. Mrs. Dalton's gaze cut through the darkness, as if stripping away each layer of air. Leah held her breath, her hand gripping the phone in her pocket. A voice calling from afar interrupted, and Dalton turned away. Leah slipped out of her hiding spot, her heart still pounding hard. In the staff break room, she held the phone close to her ear, lowering her voice as much as possible. I just saw Dalton signing papers with a manager in the wine cellar. Marcus's voice came steady, as if keeping his own heartbeat in check. Don't rush. We need a bigger piece of the puzzle. Leah, we have to be certain before we act. She wanted to say she already had enough, but the words stuck in her throat. The cool air from the AC brushed against the back of her neck, reminding her that one wrong move could bring the entire plan down. The next afternoon, while bringing tea into a VIP room to clean, Leah caught sight of an open file on the desk. The Bell Foundation charity logo in the corner pulled her eyes like a magnet. Her fingers turned the page lightly. The figures in the internal record were far lower than in the public report she had seen before. A gap large enough for hundreds of thousands of dollars to vanish. Late at night, she found a reason to go into the administration room. The harsh white blue of fluorescent light fell directly onto the desk, casting sharp-edged shadows. She placed the file on the printer tray and pressed the button. The sound of the machine starting up hummed, the gears pulling paper with a faint rasp. The smell of freshly printed paper mixed with warm ink. Leah's hands trembled as she slid the copy into her pocket, just as footsteps echoed from the hallway slow and even. She switched off the machine, slipping behind the door just as a shadow passed by. Near midnight, Leah opened her locker to get her phone. The screen lit up. Vibrating lightly in her hand, an unread email appeared at the top. Stop digging, or you'll regret it. The font was plain sans serif, dark gray, with a string of characters underneath fortune C17 like a code. There was no clear sender address. She glanced around the room, feeling as if even the overhead lights were bending down to watch her. Her fingers slid across the phone case, touching a scratch that hadn't been there that morning. The phone was open to the messages screen, the conversation with Marcus pushed to the top. The battery icon had turned red, even though she had fully charged it that morning. Leah closed the locker, but she couldn't shut away the feeling someone had touched her things. And perhaps they were still somewhere nearby, only a few steps away. The locker door shut with a metallic thud, but the unease clung to Leah like static. Her thumb brushed the new scratch on her phone's case, and the scene dissolved, replaced by another, years earlier, in a room where the air itself felt heavy with money and intent. A mahogany conference table stretched the length of the Royal Crest boardroom, polished so perfectly it mirrored the chandelier above thousands of crystals scattering warm light across the room. Marcus sat at one end, posture straight, a tailored charcoal suit framing the quiet confidence in his shoulders. Across from him, the hotel's board members, their pens poised over leather-bound folders, eyes flicking between him and the contracts laid out like treasure maps. "Before we finalize," Marcus said, sliding a single page forward, "there's one clause I won't move on." His voice was calm but cut through the murmurs like glass. He tapped the page with the Mont Blanc in his hand. "A fixed percentage of net profits will be allocated to the Bell Foundation Scholarship Fund every fiscal year." One of the directors, a woman with hair pinned in a perfect twist, gave the kind of smile that never reached her eyes. "It's unconventional," she said. "It's non-negotiable," Marcus replied, meeting her gaze until the silence tipped in his favor. The hotel's CEO, a broad man in a midnight blue tie, glanced at the others before nodding slowly. Pens began to move, the soft scratch of ink on paper filling the space. Marcus's signature came last, bold, deliberate, a line that tethered his vision to the opulent walls around him. When the final page slid back across the table, Marcus allowed himself the smallest exhale. This was more than an investment, it was a promise. A pipeline for students who would never otherwise set foot in halls like these. For a moment, the room's gold accents and the soft clink of water glasses felt like the sound of a future being built. But not every face shared his satisfaction. At the far end, a younger board member leaned back, arms crossed, watching Marcus with an expression that was neither approval nor respect, something colder. "Calculating. Generous of you," the man murmured, almost too quietly to catch. "Let's hope it doesn't become a liability." The words slid off the table like spilled wine, noticed, but not mopped up. Marcus stood, shook hands, and left the room believing he'd secured not just a stake in a luxury empire, but a safeguard for those who deserved a chance. He didn't yet see the fine threads being knotted in the shadows, threads that would one day pull at the heart of this clause until it frayed. And he couldn't have known that the very promise he fought to enshrine would, in time, become the battlefield for a war he hadn't planned to fight. The memory shifted forward. Years past the triumphant signing. The boardroom was smaller this time, stripped of ceremony. A narrow table, the scent of stale coffee, and folders stacked like barricades. Marcus sat at the head, flipping through the quarterly financial report. The rustle of pages was the only sound until it stopped. His eyes froze on a column of numbers. The Bell Foundation's allocation slashed to less than half of what it should have been. "What is this?" His voice was low, but it carried weight. A senior accountant cleared his throat. "There have been operational reallocations. It's all within discretion." Marcus's hand came down on the table. Not in a slam, but in a single, sharp strike that made the pens jump. Silence expanded in the room, pressing against the walls. Across from him, his longtime counsel leaned in, voice low enough for only Marcus to hear. "If you push this now, they'll make it messy. Contracts, press leaks, you could be in legal battles for years. And if the shareholders think you're stirring trouble..." Marcus didn't answer. He kept staring at the page, jaw tight, the weight of betrayal settling into his bones. The image dissolved into another memory further back, decades earlier. A cramped dorm room with peeling paint, a single bed, a desk littered with secondhand textbooks. The winter air seeped through the thin window, and Marcus, barely 20, wore the same sweater 3 days in a row. A thin envelope lay on the desk, its corner worn from being handled too many times. He tore it open with care. "We are pleased to inform you." The words blurred for a second as his breath caught. It was a full scholarship, the kind of lifeline that didn't just keep you in school, it kept you from disappearing into the grind of 2 jobs and dropped classes. That letter had bought him time to dream, and the degree that followed had opened every door since. Back in the present, the hum of the HVAC in the boardroom was a constant reminder. Without that break, he would never have been here. That scholarship wasn't just a line item in a budget, it was the reason he'd made it out. Protecting the Bell Foundation wasn't business. It was repayment for a debt he could never truly clear. Later that night, Marcus sat alone in his private office at Royal Crest. The skyline bled into shadow beyond the glass, the city's lights blinking like distant warnings. A desk lamp cast a warm, narrow cone over a single-frame photograph, a younger Marcus, in that old sweater, grinning with the scholarship letter in hand. He stared at it for a long time, the reflection of the photo glinting in his eyes that now knew promises could be stolen as easily as money. The glow of the desk lamp in Marcus's office faded in Leah's mind, replaced by the muted hum of Royal Crest's service corridor. She kept her distance, the rubber soles of her shoes swallowing her footsteps as she trailed Miss Dalton down a hallway she'd never worked before. Dalton's pace was steady, purposeful. Every so often, she glanced over her shoulder, not enough to catch Leah outright, but enough to remind anyone behind her that she noticed. Leah shifted her gaze each time, feigning interest in a floral arrangement or a framed photograph of the hotel's opening gala. They turned a corner, and that's when Leah saw it. Half hidden between a maintenance closet and an alcove for housekeeping carts, a door marked staff only. But it wasn't on any of the floor schematics she'd reviewed in her first week. The door was painted a deep matte gray, blending with the wall until you were close enough to notice. Its brass handle gleamed under the overhead light, polished by frequent use. Above it, a small metal plate bore no room number, just an engraving so faint it could be mistaken for a scratch. Leah slowed her steps, letting Dalton put more space between them. Then she pivoted, pretending to be lost, phone in hand as if searching for directions. A quick glance around empty hall. She inched closer, heart ticking faster with every step. From behind the door came a muffled sound. Not the clatter of dishes or the whir of a laundry machine, but low voices measured, deliberate. She couldn't make out the word, only the rhythm pause, reply, pause again. Leah lifted her phone and, under the guise of checking the time, angled the lens toward the door for a single snapshot. Her thumb barely tapped the screen when a faint click came from inside. The handle turned. She froze, stepping back toward the wall just as the door opened a narrow slit. For the briefest second, through the gap, she caught a flicker of movement, a shadow crossing the dim interior. Then, as quickly as it appeared, the door shut again, the latch catching with a quiet, decisive snap. Leah exhaled slowly, the image of that moving silhouette burning itself into her mind. The image of that shadow behind the staff-only door still lingered as Leah stepped into the warm, amber light of the VIP lounge that evening. Crystal sconces threw soft patterns across the carpet, and the muted clink of glassware mingled with the low hum of conversation. She moved between tables with practiced ease, offering refills and discreetly clearing plates. At a corner banquette, a man in his late 50s waved her over. His tie was loosened, the top button of his shirt undone. A half-empty glass of aged scotch rested in front of him, its smoky scent already hanging in the air. "Ah, the new face," he said, words drawn out, vowels stretching with the languor of someone well past his limit. "Come, sit for a moment, no one will mind." Leah gave a polite smile, staying on her feet. "Can I get you another drink, sir?" He chuckled, leaning back. "Another I've already paid for my share tonight, and then some." His voice dipped lower, as if sharing a joke meant only for her. "You know, it pays to be generous with the right people. A little donation here and there, and suddenly, my suite is always ready. The best table in the restaurant. All mine." His breath carried the heady mix of oak-aged liquor and arrogance. Leah kept her expression neutral, but her mind was stitching pieces together, embezzled charity funds. And now, whispered bribes from the very guests who were supposed to be patrons. He swirled the scotch, eyes half-lidded. Dalton knows how to take care of her friends. The name struck a chord. Leah remembered seeing it in a margin note on one of the internal files right beside the name of another man mentioned in the wine cellar phone call. Her pulse quickened. "You're new, so you'll learn," he continued, tapping the side of his nose. "There's a network here, and if you're lucky, you'll be on the right side of it." Leah nodded slightly, feigning deference. The man grinned, lifting his glass in a lazy salute. "This week will be fun if the shipment arrives on time." The last word lingered between them, heavy and deliberate, before he downed the rest of his drink. The word shipment echoed in her head as Leah left the lounge, weaving her way through the quieter service halls. She knew exactly where she wanted to go, the gray staff-only door, but as she rounded the last corner, a shadow moved into her path. The security guard filled the narrow hallway, a wall of dark fabric and muscle. His black uniform was crisp, The radio clipped high on his shoulder. A silver badge glinted under the fluorescent light, and his eyes flat. Assessing never left hers. "Restricted area," he said, voice low, the kind that didn't need to rise to carry authority. "Staff stay on their assigned floors." Leah stopped, forcing a faint, apologetic smile. "Sorry, I was just looking for the supply room." Before he could answer, the guard's radio crackled to life. Static hissed, followed by a voice on the other end. Male, hurried, slightly muffled. "Midnight delivery confirmed wine cellar Dalton will be present." The guard pressed a hand to his earpiece, tilting his head to listen. Leah stood still, eyes on the floor, as if embarrassed at being caught. But inside, she caught every word, her mind stitching it to the drunk VIP's comment from earlier. Another burst of static, then the same voice clear the hallways. No interruptions. "Copy," the guard replied into the mic. He turned his attention back to Leah, the set of his jaw making it clear the conversation was over. "Back to your station." She nodded quickly, stepping away. Her hands busied themselves with adjusting a tray of linens she'd picked up from a nearby cart. Every movement deliberate to mask her pounding heart. The pieces were falling into place. Dalton, a midnight delivery, the wine cellar. The word shipment wasn't about wine at all. It could be the missing link to explain the disappearing funds from the Bell Foundation. And if she was right, she had less than a few hours before whatever was coming would vanish, just like the money. What would you do if you were in her place? Risk everything to find out, or walk away before it's too late? Drop your answer in the comments, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what Leah does next. Leah found Rosa in the linen room, folding towels into perfect stacks. As Rosa turned to fetch another cart, Leah's fingers brushed the lanyard dangling from the edge of the table. The plastic card slid into her palm in one fluid motion, hidden by the fold of a fresh sheet she carried out with her. Moments later, she was back in the quiet corridor outside the gray staff-only door. The reader's red light blinked steadily until she swiped the card, then turned green with a muted beep. Leah eased the door open and slipped inside. The room was dim, lit only by the glow of a desk lamp in the corner. A large safe sat against the far wall, beside tall filing cabinets with labels so precise they might have been stenciled. Papers covered the desk in neat but sprawling piles, as though someone worked here often, yet never left a task half-finished. She moved to the safe, running her fingers over the keypad. The door was already ajar, as if someone had been interrupted. Inside, stacks of manila folders were bound with rubber bands. Leah pulled one free contract stamped with the Royal Crest seal, ledgers marked with columns of figures, and a list of VIP names she recognized from her shifts, each with handwritten notes in the margins. Tucked beneath the folders was a single, thick envelope. The paper was heavy, the flap unsealed, its surface faintly smudged as if handled many times. No writing, no markings, just a weight in her hand that felt out of proportion to its size. Her breath slowed, not from calm, but from the tightening coil in her chest. Whatever was inside, someone had wanted it close to the money, as though it was worth just as much. She turned toward the desk, the envelope still in her grip. The door swung open with a sharp crack against the wall. "Miss West had wanted us." Dalton filled the frame, her silhouette cutting into the lamplight. The air seemed to drop a few degrees as her eyes locked onto Leah, pale and unblinking, the kind of gaze that stripped away pretense. And then her voice came, low and cold. "Mrs." Dalton didn't just stand in the doorway she claimed it. Her heels clicked once on the threshold before she crossed into the room, each step measured, the sound sharp against the hush. The scent of her perfume crisp, expensive, cut through the stale paper and metal air. She closed the door behind her without looking, the latch snapping into place like a verdict. "Put the envelope down," she said, voice low but carrying an edge that left no space for argument. Leah set it slowly on the desk, keeping her eyes wide, breathing shallow, letting a trace of tremor show in her hands. The phone in her pocket vibrated once, silent. Quick confirmation the photo she'd taken had just been delivered to Marcus. She didn't move toward it. Dalton's gaze dropped to the open safe. And the rest? All of it. She stepped closer, her shadow falling over the files. The faint tick of the wall clock counted the seconds between them. Leah swallowed, reaching for a stack of ledgers. I, I wasn't. Save it. Dalton's smile was a slash of mockery. New hires don't wander into management offices by accident. Who sent you? Leah let the pause stretch, as if searching for word, when in truth she was buying time. No one. I saw the door open. I thought, you thought wrong. Dalton's tone was almost amused, but her eyes didn't soften. She moved in until the desk was between them, her fingertips resting on the pile of contracts. The gesture was subtle, but it radiated ownership as if the paper itself was part of her territory. Her nails tapped once, twice, in time with the clock. Leah glanced at the door, then back at Dalton, letting her lips part in a breath that wasn't quite a plea. I'll go. I didn't see anything important. Dalton tilted her head. That's the problem. Dear, you saw enough. The silence pressed in, broken only by the faint metallic clink of the safe's lock as Dalton swung it shut. She picked up the envelope, tucking it neatly under her arm. Then, without taking her eyes off Leah, she pulled her phone from her pocket and dialed. Her voice dropped, low and deliberate. Bring her to the boardroom. Leah felt the air in the room shift heavier, colder as footsteps echoed faintly from the hallway outside. Dalton's phone call ended, and within seconds the door opened again. Two security staff appeared, their dark suits and silent footsteps making the air feel tighter. This way, one said, his voice devoid of inflection. Leah walked between them, her steps measured, forcing her breathing into a calm rhythm even as her pulse thundered in her ears. The hallway stretched longer than she remembered, each turn feeling like another layer closing in. The boardroom doors loomed ahead, double panels of frosted glass framed in dark walnut. One of the guards pushed them open, and cold white light spilled out. Inside, a long walnut table dominated the space, its surface polished to a perfect mirror. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the city skyline, but the blinds were drawn halfway, muting the view into pale slats of daylight. High-backed leather chairs lined either side, everyone occupied. The air smelled faintly of paper and the metallic tang of fresh coffee. Leah was guided to stand at the far end of the table. She could feel the weight of the room on her skin, dozens of eyes tracking her, assessing, judging. Somewhere to her left, the repetitive tap of a pen against wood broke the silence. A man in a tailored navy suit, seated closest to the head of the table, slid a folder across the polished surface. The whisper of paper on wood was louder than it should have been. Miss Carter, he said, voice clipped. Effective immediately. Your employment at Royal Crest is terminated. Leah's face stayed still, her eyes calm. But inside, her heart was pounding hard enough she was sure it could be heard. She kept her voice low, almost polite. May I ask why? The man didn't answer. Another member, a woman with rimless glasses, leaned forward, resting her folded hands on the table. You know why? Her gaze was as cold as the light overhead. The pen kept tapping. A stack of papers shifted, sliding toward Leah as if to underline the finality of the decision. No one touched them. They simply sat there, like an unspoken verdict. Dalton took a seat halfway down the table, her chin slightly raised, eyes locked on Leah with a look that carried both triumph and warning. The silence stretched, broken only by the faint hum of the air vents. The doors swung open. Marcus walked in, his presence filling the space before he spoke. Beside him, a man in a charcoal suit carried a slim leather briefcase, his ID badge clipped to his lapel, Financial Crimes Division. The room shifted. Dalton's face paled, her lips parting in the faintest, involuntary reaction. Marcus set his hands on the table, leaning forward just enough to command every gaze. His voice was calm, but it carried an unmistakable edge. We're here for the truth. The words "we're here for the truth" still hung in the air when the room shifted from corporate theater to something far more formal and final. The man from the Financial Crimes Division stepped forward, producing a folded document from his briefcase. By order of the State Attorney's Office, we are executing a formal investigation into Royal Crest's financial practices, he announced. His voice echoed in the cold, white-lit boardroom. Two uniformed security officers entered, their presence sealing the room like a vault. One unrolled yellow evidence tape across the double doors, while the other set a small camera on the table, its red light blinking to life. Marcus stood aside, arms folded, as the lead investigator began reading names. Miss Dalton Wananemershuan, Mr. Reeves Suriyasinonton, Mr. Hanley. Each name was followed by the dull click of handcuffs, the metallic snap cutting through the tension. Dalton's composure cracked for the first time. Her jaw tightened, and her eyes darted to Marcus before falling to the polished table. Reeves muttered something about a misunderstanding, while Hanley's face went ashen, lips pressed into a bloodless line. From the hallway came a burst of camera flashes, bright staccato bursts that painted the frosted glass in bursts of white. The doors opened briefly to admit a reporter, mic in hand, who called out above the shuffle, "Is it true the charity funds were diverted for personal gain?" Downstairs in the hotel's marble lobby, the story was already breaking. Flat-screen TVs behind the concierge desk streamed live footage, bold red banners reading Royal Crest Management indicted in charity fraud. A scrolling ticker named the Bell Foundation, the word embezzlement flashing every few seconds. Back upstairs, Marcus moved to the head of the table. When he spoke, his voice was steady and resonant, carrying to the last corner of the room. "Royal Crest will undergo a complete restructuring," he said, glancing at each person still seated. "The Bell Foundation's scholarship fund will be restored to its full capacity, and every dollar misused will be accounted for. This hotel was built on trust, and that trust will be rebuilt." His right hand rested lightly on the table, fingers splayed, a gesture both grounding and resolute. His eyes, sharp and unblinking, met the camera lens directly, leaving no doubt who was now in control. Leah stood just inside the frame, her uniform crisp, her posture straight. Relief settled in her chest like the first deep breath after a long dive, but the weight of caution remained. This battle was over, but wars had a way of spawning their sequels. As the room emptied, she followed Marcus into the corridor. Through the glass wall of the lobby below, she spotted Rosa waiting near the entrance. The older woman's eyes were glossy, the faintest smile tugging at her lips. Leah's own lips curved in return, but in the quiet space between them, she felt the next question forming what came after the applause. The din of cameras and murmured questions faded as Leah stepped into a quiet corner of the lobby. Rosa was waiting there, hands clasped, eyes shining. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Rosa closed the distance and pulled Leah into an embrace that was steady in pressure, but trembling at the edges. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice low, warm, and unsteady, "for seeing what the rest of us tried not to." Leah held her for a moment longer, feeling the years of unspoken tension ease in that small space between them. Across the room, Marcus approached. The weight in his expression was gone, replaced by something lighter but no less focused. "You've done more than I could have asked," he said, "and I'm not letting you walk away just yet." He extended a folder toward her. "Advisor for new staff training. We could use someone who knows what to look for." Her eyes flicked from the folder to Marcus's face. A role inside Royal Crest, not as a spy this time, but as a guardian. She took the folder, nodding once. A quiet acknowledgement of trust given and accepted. In the days that followed, Royal Crest began to look different. Light spilled through the lobby windows in a way it hadn't before, unobstructed, as though the place itself was exhaling. The staff's smiles felt real now, not the polished mask of obligation. Near the elevators, a new bulletin board displayed the reinstated Bell Foundation scholarship announcement. The bold letters, a silent vow to keep the promise alive. That afternoon, Leah stepped out through the revolving doors. The late sun washed over her shoulders, warm and golden, the air carrying the faint scent of fresh flowers from the planters outside. For the first time in weeks, she felt the quiet certainty that the chapter had closed. She made it halfway down the front steps before she noticed it in an envelope resting atop her bag. No name, no return address. The paper was thick, its faint fragrance carrying the dry sweetness of old wood, like the inside of a vintage cabinet. Leah slid a finger under the flap and drew out a single photograph. Her own face stared back at her, caught in mid-action, standing in front of the open safe in the staff room. The edges of the photo were crisp, the focus sharp enough to feel invasive. Her pulse spiked. She turned her head, scanning the street, the lobby windows, the line of black cars idling by the curb. Every movement seemed suddenly suspect, every passerby a potential watcher. She slipped the photo back into the envelope, holding it tight. She thought the game was over. Someone just raised the stakes. The photograph still weighed in her bag when Leah returned to Royal Crest weeks later. The lobby felt different now. Afternoon light streamed through newly polished glass, spilling gold across the marble floor. Fresh arrangements of lilies and eucalyptus perfumed the air with a clean, almost spring-like scent. The reception desk bustled with activity staff moving with purpose, their smiles unforced, their laughter carrying just faintly over the soft piano from the lounge. Leah sat in a low armchair tucked into the corner, the kind of spot where she could see both entrances without drawing attention. A small leather-bound notebook rested on her lap. She wasn't taking minutes, not exactly just jotting down observations in neat, deliberate strokes. Old habits were hard to leave behind. A group of guests in tailored coats swept through the revolving door, luggage rolling behind them. A concierge stepped forward with a genuine welcome, one hand gesturing toward the elevators. Across the room, a young porter caught Leah's eye and gave a quick nod before disappearing with a cart. Marx's words drifted back to her, as clear as the day he'd said them. Real power is knowing who you're helping. She'd thought she understood it then. Now, she knew it meant more than charity, it meant vigilance. Her phone vibrated once against the notebook. She flipped it over, expecting a message from Marcus. Instead, the screen displayed a number she didn't recognize. The text was plain. No punctuation. You think it's over. Look closer. The font was standard, but beneath the message was a string of symbols, 3 triangles, a circle, and a broken line like something lifted from a code book. Leah's eyes rose from the screen to the discreet black dome of a security camera mounted high in the corner. From the camera's point of view, she was a lone figure in the corner, still and small against the sweep of the lobby. In the reflection of the polished glass behind her, the outline of another person lingered just outside the frame, motionless, watching. The face was lost to the light, but the shape was unmistakably human. The chatter at reception, the scent of lilies, the warm afternoon light, none of it dulled the sudden pull in her gut. The game hadn't ended. She closed the notebook, slipped the phone into her pocket, and let her gaze drift across the room as if nothing had changed. Some doors should stay closed, she thought, rising from the chair. Others are just waiting to be opened. Fade out. This is Unveiled Wealth. Some stories end with justice. Others are just getting started.